Welcome everybody to this Vendux podcast, or as we call it, the V-Cast, titled The Next Stage CEO. Today I'm joined by Zen Benefiel, founder of Be the Dream, based near Phoenix, Arizona in Chandler. Then Zen has been at this for a while. He started Be the Dream back in 1988, and over the decades has worn the hats of transformational coach, consultant, author, and even host of a TV show. He holds a master's in organizational management and an MBA in project management, and he's also a certified transformational life coach and hypnotherapist, guiding entrepreneurs and small business owners to the human side of building a company. Zen, welcome to the V-Cast.
Oh, thanks so much for bringing me on, and so good to be here, Henning. Be the Dream's been a wonderful exploration. My passion's been truly towards planetary citizens and planetary citizenship for a long time. So I founded the nonprofit just a few years ago as well to pick up on Donald Key's work from the 1970s, where he presented the idea of a borderless world. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be. Now, it has been around since 1988. What was the original spark, the problem that you set out to solve?
Well, I'd already solved a problem, actually. I was in the aerospace industry. I was production control coordinator. I'd been running a machine. I was a production grinder specialist, and then got on the Morisiki SL3 CNC lathes, and was constantly tweaking things because I felt like the machines could do better, and which irritated everybody else around me. Most of them were union guys that had moved to Arizona from the Midwest, and so they just did piecework at the hourly rate and no more. I couldn't sit and do that. So I was also the emergency response team lieutenant for the second shift, which meant I had 20 guys underneath me, and any time an emergency came up, I was the first one that got called on the radio to take care of it. Whether it be putting on a full chem suit and going into the lab where the cyanide tanks were, or putting out a mag fire, those kinds of things. So the lieutenant on day shift knew what was happening with me on the shop floor. And he says, "Hey, I suggest you put your app into Materiel. They like guys like you." And so I did. Was a swing shift expediter for about 6 months, and then a day shift position opened up. I put in for it, and I found myself on a $7 million a month, 800 SKU number commercial spares desk. And I loved it. Go anywhere in the plant, do anything I needed to get my job done. Now, what happened though was that, unbeknownst to me, I was the top of the production charts for the entire year that I was on the desk. And a couple of supervisors finally came to me and said, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Am I in trouble?" Right? And they said, no, we want to know how you're doing your job because, and then I identified the statistics, right? Which I was totally unaware of. I was just doing my job, didn't care about anything else as long as I was helpful to others. So they said, "Well, how are you doing it?" And I said, my initial response was, "I just treat people like I want to be treated." Right? So here is an aerospace manufacturing company, defense contractor, as well as commercial projects. But in the 80s, this is the mid 80s, it was command and control to the extreme. In other words, I saw people beating people up emotionally if they couldn't get what they wanted, which was just horrible. And I saw how people reacted. I saw, this was delays. This is the friction we talk about in industry today, where it's called the execution chasm, right? And so I suggested having interpersonal skills development in our departmental meeting, 35 people. I was shunned for the for the next week. And at the same time, I thought, okay, well, I know there's a way to combine best practices from both business and spiritual realms, right? And I wanted to bring those two together because this is basically what I was doing already and demonstrating that, yes, it works. So I formed Be the Dream with that notion of being eventually able to come back into the corporate world, not with a vengeance, but with passion and purpose to
Mhm.
really make things better for people. Because especially today with the agile environment, the VUCA world, right? Execution chasm's huge because people are afraid, especially with AI coming onto the scene. They're afraid for their jobs, so they're going to start hiding stuff. It's human nature, right? And
Mhm.
the fears, the unspoken, unfulfilled expectations of trust, honesty, transparency, all those kinds of things that usually aren't present in an organization because it's not about the people. It's about the numbers out the door and the stakeholder dividends. Well, that's changing. And I'm right on the forefront of that. Over the last 5 years, have had conversations with an AI developer, unbeknownst to me, who is in Pakistan. Now, I say that, there's a lot of AIs, or yeah, what would they call it? Not AIs, VAs, virtual assistants coming out of Pakistan, right? Well, this guy's different. Uh, he taught at Harvard for a while, been in AI for 30 years. And we were having discussions. We met through an authors group that's featured on Biz Catalyst 360. So it's a huge repository of thousands of articles about reimagining humanity in a new way. And so Farouk, Omar is his name. He and I were exchanging there, and it spilled out over into various threads on LinkedIn and profiles. And over the 5 year period of talking about all the levels of management, leadership, servant leadership, spirituality, organizational development, the future, all of this, he was building a system in the background. And he used my latest books, Planetary Citizens, Awakening the Heart of Humanity, and Coherence, from hydrogen to humanity, as layers in this AI, because it's all about alignment and coherence, right? And then we formed a partnership with the Gandhian Global Harmony Association, based out of St. Petersburg, Russia, who have compiled a document called the Perpetual Peace Science that was compiled by 30 some odd scientists. And it's just been republished this year with additions, including my own. Um, so this AI universal engine, we've trademarked it. And what it does is it bridges that execution chasm with AI precision in analyzing the business and where the leaks are, and also looking at the human dynamic and where the friction points are. And Farouk's layered all of these engines within the engine to analyze all the read-only data that is far superior than anything I'm aware of on the marketplace. And it is able to not just analyze, it also suggests paths. And it goes through 10,000 scenarios to make it VUCA proof, basically.
Let me
And so
inject
it
a
takes all
question
of
here,
that. See
Zen, if
what?
I may. Um, Sort of thinking about this from a business perspective, you described a journey where you started as a coach, as a consultant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with a partner, you've built a tool. Are you a coach consultant that brings a tool to a
Well,
client,
yes, I'm on the back end of that,
or are
right?
you a
So
platform and it runs by itself?
once an organization or a company, corporation, what have you, installs it in their system, it's theirs. And so it's autonomous. It doesn't leak out, right? It's solely owned by the business. And then what happens is when the identification of the friction points in the organization, right, the fears or the um, resistance that people have to implementing the strategy that the company has said, okay, this is what we're going to do, right? So there's this natural resistance that's taking place. I say natural. It isn't really because it's fear-based, right? So what we do then, and on the back end of that, guys like myself and others that we're going to be bringing on board, we we build community rather than an organization. So we restore the trust base in the workforce.
So in the context of a company, um, does it mean you reorganize the business after the AI tool has identified friction points?
Yes,
Okay.
right. That's the first step is to analyze, and we do in 4 to 5 days what normal consultants take 3 months to do through interviews and consultations and
Yeah.
best guesses. We don't give you a best guess.
Yeah.
We give
Would you,
you the path that's VUCA proof.
mhm. Would you say that from a business perspective, your business is now at a transition point where previously it was, it was
It's another layer.
coaching service. Now you are embedding yourself in the organization and you're identifying problems in real time and then address them. So it's more of a less of a coaching. It's more like an ongoing participation in the optimization or betterment of an
Well,
organization.
the coaching's really part of that second phase of working with the organization.
Mhm.
It's critical to understand human dynamics and people, right? Which is really where, from transformational coach, I don't just look at action plans. I look at the individual, the collective the holistic system that they are, first of all, and balance their inner and outer realities because we often get in our own way because of how we think. And as a transformational coach, I ask questions and I listen and I hear those disconnects in the responses that the client offers, right? And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a difference. We call it cognitive dissonance, right? It's where the belief system of the individual doesn't match with their outer activity. And so we bridge that. We resolve that inner and outer blockage that brings a person into their own awareness, able to ask themselves, humans are funny. We're just like AI. We have a recursive function. And for your guests or your audience, recursive function simply means a system that queries itself for problem solving. Okay. We have that too. It's a natural system built into us. We just don't use it and or trust it. You always hear about the second guess kind of thing. Well, that first response is almost, I would say 100% spot on when we follow it.
Now, before you get to that point where you're inside an organization, you're interviewing, you are identifying either through interviews or through the new AI tool friction points and then
Mhm.
address them. You have to find clients, you have to find organizations, companies that are interested in working with you. Can you share a little bit about how you are going about finding clients?
Sure. Well, first of all, because of the magnitude of the engine, it doesn't really work on small businesses because there's not enough data available. It works best between 10 and 100 million in revenue because those size businesses have all that information available in their spreadsheets and their databases and their computer systems, right? And it's all read only. So that's what we use in order to do the initial report. So that business size is important, and how we're getting to them is the same way that we've had this evolution of the engine in flow as opposed to pushing and pulling, which is what we generally do in the marketplace, trying to get what we want, right? Find the client, engage them and meet all the objections so that we can get a sale. Well, this is a different opportunity and process. And it's based on the alignment and coherence of the engine and the aura of two minds, the combination of the AI and the human side of things. And so we know, and science has proven now, quantum physics, we're all energy, we're all moving and attracted to things that we resonate with. The trick is to be able to be aware, focus your attention, right, where your intention and your interactions match with that inner understanding and trust that the breadcrumbs are going to show up in front of you. Now, breadcrumbs in this case would be connections that I make on LinkedIn or other professional platforms that I'm involved with.
Okay. Um, I think you wrote a book on how to grow a business with LinkedIn, right?
I did 2014 before they changed the GUI. I wrote a book. I figured people needed it, right? I was having some
Yeah.
success in building my network, and I thought, well, I seem to know at least some things, and I saw my other professionals, my cadre here, that they were having trouble. And I've always been an early adopter, and I love technology, so I wrote the book, and then the local chapter of SCORE asked me to do some workshops. So I did workshops for them for almost 3 years. And this was in the mid teens.
Okay. Would you think that the book is still relevant today, or has
Absolutely.
anything?
Philosophy is always relevant. It's just a different interface.
Well,
One
also
thing
the
that I was kind
outlook
of
has
sad
changed.
about is that LinkedIn originally had its own built in CRM, and now you got to use Sales Navigator.
Mhm. Okay. Over the years that you've been running your consulting practice, have you brought in other coaches, other people to work with?
Occasionally, but rarely. There's a flip side to what I'm doing. I also did partnering workshops for building road and bridge construction under Be the Dream. Team partnering was the DBA. And so occasionally I'd bring in another facilitator. Usually my groups were anywhere from 20 to 40, 45 ish. It
Mhm.
gets larger than that, and then I need another facilitator. I had one that was a $500 million project and 80 people. So that one was kind of a challenge. We got through it, but those kinds of things, those environments allowed me to practice the principles that I use in the coaching and get people on the same page. I mean, these groups were engineers, business owners, vendors, contractors, general contractors, politicians, city officials, railroad, homeland security, DOD. I mean, it was across the gamut, and I did these cross country for over 10 years and 10 years with ADOT here in Arizona.
Okay. And now with with the partnership you have with the developer out of Pakistan and the new AI tool, how do you think that's going to change your business in the next years going forward?
Well, it's going to change it drastically because I'm not going to be looking for individual clients anymore. I'm going to be looking for companies and organizations, which is really the level I like to play at.
And that would be the ICP of 10 to 100 million that you mentioned earlier.
Or large nonprofit concerns. For instance, there's one here in Arizona called the Arizona Impact for Good. They're an umbrella nonprofit that has hundreds of nonprofits around Arizona underneath their umbrella. So the engine would be perfect for them because service delivery gaps come because of those friction points. So by removing those friction points, then service delivery goes up. Their ROI, is astronomical at that point. We've done some tests on several businesses that have failed over the last 5 years, and all of them show that there would have been an increase of several 1,000% ROI if they would have had the engine and relied on its decision making capability.
Mhm. So what does that mean for your business if seems to
Puts me in
me.
a catbird seat of being able to wield the tool, if you will, wield the sword to cut through all of the distractions and things that have the lack in implementing strategies in the organization, because we've got a rapidly changing world. We've got a lot of things to take care of. When this kind of engine and system, which is basically it's a cognitive strategic intelligence system. So by using that, it bridges that human AI world ethically, right? Which people are afraid of. Is like, oh, is AI going to take over? No, this is why we built this with my book, Coherence, and with the Perpetual Peace Science as the last addition to it, so that it never crosses that boundary.
So that's the output that and the impact that you are generating. But how about the business itself? Will you be able to take 10 times as many clients as you did before?
Well, as anything, we're not looking at it small scale, right? Once we have the proof of concept, so to speak,
Mm.
then we can scale it. Now, one of the things that are available with that is because of my podcast, right? I've got 240 some odd episodes. Most of them have been business leaders, probably a third of them different types of leadership consultants who authored books. So these are the kind of folks that are just ready, waiting, and willing to step into a new opportunity that combines that so that they can actually do what they love to do.
So, with that in mind, that sounds like coaching advice to your peers. Um, are there things that, if you look now that you look back at it, that you would have done differently if you had a chance to start over again?
What I hear you saying is, how would I harvest my past if I would do it differently, right? Um, my life has been kind of a magical mystery tour anyway. I don't know that I'd change anything because of where I'm at now and what I have available and the possibilities to coagulate in the future. I got no regrets.
It's not about regrets. I was thinking, for example, now you see the impact that an AI tool has on the business and on the outcomes for your clients. If you could have had it 5 years ago, wouldn't that have been more of a game changer?
No, because a lot of times it's timing, right? Timing is everything. It's like a teenager asking questions, not asking questions, but you want, as a parent, to give them wisdom, right? If they're not asking the questions, they're not going to listen.
Mhm.
Well, now there's that opportunity. Even Schwab mentioned it in COVID-19, the Great Reset. There was two questions he asked: one individual, one business. The individual one was, can we be caring and compassionate for one another after COVID, right? Because we weren't during it. The business question was, can businesses be agile enough to shift with the market needs after COVID? And that is probably the most critical factor, especially now, because AI wasn't around 5 years ago to the extent it is now. It couldn't have been done. Might have, right? But, however, it would have been hugely expensive. Now, it's still probably hugely expensive because there were hundreds of hours that went into the coding of this engine and the multiple layers of it. And Farouk, honestly, he had consulted internationally at the World Bank level. So he understands things from that perspective, which he brings in the technology. And then I understand things from the human perspective. And it's like a perfect marriage, right? So having those things 5 years ago, world wasn't ready for it. It wasn't in need. Now it's in need.
Okay. Well, then, thank you. A really thoughtful look at what it takes to build and then reinvent a founder led business over a really long time, and definitely something that other CEOs can benefit from. Where should listeners go to learn more about you and Be the Dream?
Well, first of all, Be the Dream, BeTheDream.com. And there is a lot of information there, including information about the engine. My podcast is One World in a New World. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, several others. And then planetarycitizens.net. On the home page, you can get 3 different books to download for free. All you got to do is click and download. There's no forms or anything. And it's Coherence, Planetary Citizens, and the Perpetual Peace Science. And then the description of creating a holistic system is throughout the site in order to move forward collectively as a global population. And the interesting thing, the Coherence, it was number 1 on Amazon's new release for a week with under system theory, physics, chaos and systems, and number 2 in social theory. Now, the full title of that is Coherence from Hydrogen to Humanity, Recursive Awakening, and the Architecture of Planetary Consciousness. It's a serious book, and it's not all that big because it's really all simple once you understand the precepts of how things work.
Great. Thank you again, Zen, for being a guest on our VCast, the Next Stage CEO. To all our listeners and people who are watching, check out other episodes as we are adding to our library on a weekly basis.
Well,
Thank
thanks
you,
so much
Zen.
for having me, Henning. It
My
was a real
pleasure.
pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Always. And give care. It's better.